Dozens of protesters lining the streets in the sleepy Massachusetts town of Dedham, all there to support a woman they believe is the victim of a massive cover-up and conspiracy by the Canton Police, the Massachusetts State Police, and the Norfolk County DA's office. They believe police planted evidence and lied to frame a Bentley University professor for murder. Her name is Karen Reed, and the folks in Norfolk County, Massachusetts haven't seen a display like this for an accused murderer since the notorious trial of Sacco and Vanzetti. The victim in this case is Boston police officer John O'Keefe, who is also Karen's boyfriend. Prosecutors say after a night of drinking, Karen, in an alcohol and jealousy-fueled rage, ran over John and left him to die on the lawn of another police officer's home on a snowy January night. But the defense says John went into that officer's home after Karen dropped him off. And it was inside that home that John was ambushed and murdered, then placed on the lawn to frame Karen. We're in week 2 of this highly divisive trial, and tonight, allegations of perjury by the defense. We'll take a listen to the 911 calls made that snowy morning as we are live from the courthouse, continuing our investigation of the tragic death of Officer John O'Keefe. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. You know, when a witness takes the stand, they take an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth. And that's an important part of testifying. Like, you can't just say the parts that you think are important. You can't kind of avoid the things that might be a little embarrassing. You need to tell the whole truth. That's your obligation. And sometimes people get in trouble when they don't tell the whole truth on the witness stand. Now, one thing you have to understand is that jurors who are trying to figure out what happened, right? The finders of fact, got that notice in the mail. Some of them don't want to be there. They hate liars. They hate them. In your case, whether it's a civil case, a criminal case, whether you're a prosecutor, a defense attorney, if you have a witness on the stand that they believe is a liar, that taints your whole case. Okay? If you have one witness that is just an outright liar, that they don't believe, and they believe is not telling the whole truth, can kill your whole case. Whether it's a civil case, you're suing an insurance company, or a criminal case, whether you're the prosecutor or the defense. I had a case as a prosecutor. One of my witnesses didn't want to admit something, and the jury knew it. And it had nothing to do with the alleged crime in the case. Nothing to do with it. But for whatever reason, this witness on cross-examination just wouldn't admit something that everyone in the room knew was true. I lost the case. Had nothing to do with the crime. It wasn't a murder. Don't worry, folks. We don't have a murderer walking around free because of it. So now, if you're the prosecution, the big question is, will the jury believe your witnesses? You need the jury to believe your witnesses. You absolutely do. I mean, this is the basis of your case. You know, that's why sometimes prosecutors hate putting on cooperating witnesses, because, you know, usually they're like co-defendants or criminals and not good people, have maybe committed perjury in the past. Maybe they just are, you know, just the dregs of society, right? And, you know, you hate putting them in there because the jury has to believe your witnesses. So sometimes you'll only put people like that up if you can corroborate their testimony in some manner, some way, right? Prosecution, you want a clean case. You want it to be like sparkling clean, because the defense is ready to attack, and you have that burden, that enormous burden to prove it beyond any and all reasonable doubt. And the seeds of reasonable doubt are quickly planted
if the jury doesn't believe your witnesses, or even worse, believes they are just outright lying. Which is why Karen Reed needs proven liars to win her case. She needs this jury to believe that they are proving that witnesses taking the stand for the prosecution are lying for whatever reason. So we'll see how all this develops inside the courtroom, because this is a battle, an absolute battle. The defense conceding nothing, every witness being tested through vigorous cross-examination. Because remember, ultimately what the defense is saying is that there is a conspiracy here, so people are lying for a reason. Let's bring in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson joining us live. He's in the thick of it in Dedham, Massachusetts tonight. Matt, great to see you. I'm going to ask you for 3 big moments today. So why don't we start with the first one?
Hey, Vinny. Well, there were some doozies today, some major moments in the Dedham courthouse here behind me happening today, week 2 of the killer or cover-up murder trial involving Karen Reed. And I have to say the biggest moment in front of the jury today had to be those 911 calls. Remember, Karen Reed described during this time by other testimony of being hysterical, screaming. You can hear her in the background of these calls made by Jen McCabe and also Kerry Roberts. Take a listen to Kerry's call.
911 emergency. Immediately concerned about the road can't get out. What's going on? There's a guy on the chocolate in the snow. In the snow? 34? Yes, 34, the Albert resident. Yes, I just pulled up and found it. Okay, 34 p.m. 34 p.m. you can't have it, yes. Not when we're on the building where you're emergency. Hello? Yes, I'm sorry. Can you come to 34? Fairview Road at Kingston? 32 Fairview? Yes, there's a man unresponsive in the snow. Okay.
And this was also a very sad moment during all of the testimony and what happened in court today, because we could see John O'Keefe, the victim in all of this, his family wiping away tears, seated in the gallery where they are each and every day, not talking to the media just yet, but they're here each and every day during this, what is going to be a tough, weeks-long trial, just 2 feet away from the person accused of killing their son, Karen Reed, and then in their eye line across from the room. You've been in there, Vinny. It's a very tight room, this courthouse here, and the jury box faces the O'Keefe family.
Oh, jury's got a very clear view of Officer O'Keefe's family. All right, that was a huge moment, those 911 calls. What do you have for number 2 tonight?
Well, number 2 was outside of the presence of the jury, and it was, well, actually it was testimony from Lieutenant Paul Gallagher with the police department in Canton, and he was testifying about another person on the force, and that's Sergeant Michael Lank, who conducted all of the interviews there at 34 Fairview Road, and he really went into detail about what his role was, Mr. Lank's role, and also his relationships with the Alberts, Nicole and Brian, who own that house. Take a listen.
Did you know personally that you were standing on the property of Brian Albert?
I did.
Did you also know that Sergeant Lank had an ongoing and a long-time relationship with the Albert family?
Objection.
Did you know that?
I know he knew them. I think you're mischaracterizing the relationship.
Did you see a problem with having somebody who knew the parties taking the initial statements from those parties?
Not at all, Sergeant Lank. No issue at all.
Not in your mind?
Not in my mind.
Were you aware that before you got to the location, that Sergeant Lank had taken it upon himself to already make contact with the individuals in the house?
Objection.
Were you aware at the time that you tasked Sergeant Lank to go talk to the folks inside the house that he had already gone into the house to talk to them?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so that testimony in front of the jury, and then at the end of the day, outside of the presence of the jury, Mr. Lank, Sergeant Lank, was called to the stand. He was questioned about his relationships, goes decades back, with the Alberts, and here's what he said.
What about Chris Albert?
Yes, I know Chris
How long have you known Chris?
since childhood.
And how would you describe your relationship with Chris Albert?
Chris and I were pretty good friends growing up, right into our 20s. Still friendly when I see him.
Back in 2002 in August, while you were off duty, were you out either drinking with Chris or in some way at a restaurant or a bar with Chris?
No,
Were you close in proximity to Chris when he was out drinking and at a bar?
no.
Was he at a restaurant?
I don't know where he was.
Were you at a bar?
I was.
At some point, did you realize that Chris was getting into some sort of a physical altercation with somebody else in a parking lot?
Yes.
Did you jump into a fist fight in order to protect Chris Albert?
Chris actually approached my vehicle and started to describe an altercation that had been in previously in the night.
Ultimately, when you realized that Chris Albert was in some sort of fracas, some sort of fight or altercation, you activated yourself as a police officer at the time.
He wasn't in a fracas when he approached my vehicle. He approached my vehicle and stated that he had been in an altercation earlier in the night with one of the Lapalato brothers, and that during that altercation, threats were made against him and his family, and he was seeking advice because he knew as a police officer as to how he should go forward. And as I was telling him what to do, that's when a group of men started to walk down Washington Street towards Chris, and he said, "Oh no, here they come."
Isn't it true that after Alfredo was handcuffed and, for all intents and purposes, physically incapacitated, you then approached Mark Lapalato?
No.
You got into a fight with Mark Lapalato, though?
Yes.
You punched him in the face?
At one point after he had struck me, yes.
So all of this situation emanated from you coming to the aid of Chris Albert, your friend, longtime childhood friend, correct?
It had nothing to do with it being Chris Albert.
Isn't it true that it had everything to do with it being Chris Albert?
No.
So just a regular random guy off the street, you would have conducted yourself the exact same way?
Absolutely.
Questioning happening outside of the presence of the jury, but Judge Cannoni ruled that their relationship can be before the jury when he testifies. This was a big win for the defense, and he could be on the stand in front of the jury as early as tomorrow.
Haven't heard those words too often, win for the defense recently in some of the moves that they've tried to make. So this could be very big for them in them trying to prove this alleged conspiracy that they say is going on. Okay, two big moments. What do you have for number 3 tonight?
Okay, so number 3 was also outside of the presence of the jury, and this is how the day started. Week number 2 kicked off with talking about firefighter Katie McLaughlin, who was on the stand last Friday. And remember, she was questioned about her relationship with Brian and Nicole Albert's daughter, Caitlin Albert. And here's what she said on the stand on Friday, and then we'll talk about it on the back end about how the defense now says that she perjured herself.
Ms. McLaughlin, who's Caitlin Albert?
I went to high school with somebody named Caitlin Albert.
With somebody named Caitlin Albert.
I went to high school with somebody named Caitlin Albert.
So do you know Caitlin Albert?
I do.
You're friends with Caitlin Albert?
I would say more acquaintances, not close friends.
How do you describe an acquaintance?
I would say that we have mutual friends, so we might see each other occasionally because of mutual friends, but we don't have a one-on-one friendship or hang out regularly.
Late last night, we received another photo where Katie McLaughlin and Caitlin Albert are standing next to each other in a photo at a baby shower in June of 2021, about 8 months before John O'Keefe's death. It's very clear to us that Katie McLaughlin perjured herself. And I wanted to discuss the issue of the admissibility of not only the photographs that we're now providing that we just received over the weekend.
Yannetti and Jackson both saying that these were new photos that were brought to their attention since her testimony on Friday that proves that she perjured herself on the stand. Well, at the end of the day, the judge hasn't ruled whether or not she's going to let those pictures in as evidence, but we did get a hint that the other person in that relationship, supposed relationship, Caitlin Albert, she may be on the stand as early as Wednesday.
Matt Johnson in the middle of it all. Crime and Justice correspondent. Thanks so much, Matt. Wow, what a day. Okay, let's bring in some guests to break down this big development. Joining us tonight from Massachusetts, Karen Reed supporter and expert Nick Rocco, and criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr., who's in Brockton tonight. Great to see you both. All right, I just want to put on the screen real quick, just so people understand who Caitlin Albert is, just the relationship here, and then we'll have our conversation. So Caitlin Albert, child of Brian and Nicole Albert, the owners of the home. She's the one who went to high school, and the question is, what exactly is her relationship with Katie McLaughlin, the firefighter who said she heard Karen Reed say, "I did it, I did it, I did it." Okay, Nick, how important is this, and why do you think that she committed perjury here?
Well, first off, she's lying on the stand saying that she is an acquaintance. These two went to grade school together, high school together. They were on the same track team together, and pictures are surfacing. She is in many photos with her, going back as early as, grade school to now the most recent picture of being June 2021 at a baby shower, and 6 to 8 months before Officer John O'Keefe had been brutally murdered. So these pictures are not just like they're in the picture together. They're next to each other. They're sitting on each other's laps in a hot tub. I mean, all of these pictures have been surfacing, and they can all be found on Turtle Boy's website. And people need to see what is going on here, because for somebody who is the one that said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," that came from her. She was the first one to say that. And now we know why she's doing that, because one of her good friends lives there, grew up there. She has to protect somebody, and unfortunately, she's not protecting herself in this situation.
Joseph Krowski Jr., your thoughts about these very serious allegations of perjury being made by the defense inside the courtroom against the firefighter?
So look, it's not perfect, but it's also not perjury. What she described her relationship with Caitlin Albert is actually the textbook definition of an acquaintance, someone that you know, someone that you're friendly with, but someone that you're not close friends with. I think look, again, it was inartful, but she said, "I know her, socialized with her, but I've never had a one-on-one connection with her. I've never socialized with her just one-on-one." If we talk about our everyday lives, we have people we see at our kids' sport events, at bar association meetings. We take pictures with them. We see them every 3 or 4 months. Sure, we like them, we know them, but I don't know if they're necessarily friends. I think it could have been prepared a little bit better. Just take ownership. If you know her, you know her. You know the questions coming up. And again, it could have been better, but it certainly doesn't meet the legal definition under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 268, Section 1, for perjury.
All right, here's what's going to happen, folks. Nick's going to come back in just a little bit. Joseph Krowski Jr. is staying with us because we've got a lot more to get to. We're going to take a look at what was done at the scene by investigators, plus coming up next hour.
In Boise, Idaho, the so-called doomsday prophet Chad Daybell is facing the death penalty for the murder of his first wife and his second wife's 2 children. Prosecutors putting in evidence of castings.
There was some type of darkness that you couldn't cast out. The Lord in his due time would have to take that person would pass away because this darkness was too much.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Reed claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious.
After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The Killer or Cover-Up Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
As far as the leaf blower was concerned, why was that a decision as far as that being an implement to use this particular scene?
It was a unique scene. There was snow. I had never processed a scene in the snow. I had seen a leaf blower used in the snow, and it's quite effective at being controlled. So that's why it was readily accessible. The scene was debilitating as we were on scene with the weather. Snow was piling up, and I thought that was the best method at that time.
So here it is. You're using the leaf blower to blow off some of the snow to attempt to recover some of the pieces of evidence and uncover blood and pieces of the tailgate. This is, I don't know if we've ever seen, I mean, he's never done it before. I've never seen it before. Is it effective? Is it proper? Was it a good choice? Let's talk about it. Still with me, criminal defense attorney Joseph Growski Jr. And joining us, former New York City Assistant Commissioner, former NYPD Sergeant Special Assignment, Dr. Keith Taylor. Also with us, criminologist, author, and professor at St. Thomas University, Dr. Debbie Goodman. Great to have everyone here. Dr. Keith Taylor, let me start with you. You get snow in New York. You got a crime scene. It snowed. What do you think of bringing the leaf blower out to try to uncover and get to some of the potential evidence at the scene?
Well, normally New York City NYPD has a lot of resources available, and as long as they can secure a crime scene, they can usually get additional resources relatively quickly. If there's a situation where it looks like evidence might be lost or contaminated or destroyed by, say, the snow, then that might require being innovative and using some sort of alternative method to secure that evidence and to keep it available for further analysis.
Dr. Debbie Goodman, you see any downside to this?
Good evening, Vinny. It's a pleasure to join you. You know, this is such a meticulous, pristine process when an investigator is gathering, collecting, and preserving evidence. And of course, it requires a lot of education, a lot of training. So this is indeed questionable. I certainly understand the importance of an exigent circumstance and maybe the need to be creative, but at the same time, you know, to gather, collect, and preserve evidence in a credible, authentic manner is critical. So between the leaf blower and these red Solo cups, I think it's going to be very questionable for a jury to hear this.
Let's get to those Solo cups that came up on cross-examination. The defense obviously believing that this was not the best way to get the evidence, but let's take a listen.
Had you ever used a leaf blower in a crime scene preservation effort?
First time.
First time. And you indicated your testimony was temporary evidence containers to collect that blood, correct?
Yep, we utilized cups, plastic cups.
Those were red Solo cups, right?
That's correct.
The same kind of red Solo cup you drink beer out of at a barbecue?
Yeah, sure, you could.
Objection, Your Honor. Strike.
I'll allow it.
There's nothing special about the red Solo cup?
Other than their plastic, nothing special.
And where did you get those red Solo cups?
We got them from Lieutenant Kelleher.
So in other words, you got the, to use your words, the evidence containers from a neighbor.
Correct.
He had some Solo cups in his house.
Now, we asked him if he had any plastic containers, any type of plastic container that we could utilize.
Okay, Joseph Kraske Jr. I covered a case in New Jersey. They put evidence in a pizza box. They absolutely did. So what are your thoughts about the solo cups for blood evidence in this case?
Well, look, it's not that I don't just love the way they were doing it. I don't love who's doing it. Much like New York, we have resources. We have crime scene services from the state police. There's a sheriff's department 15 minutes away that most likely has a Bureau of Criminal Investigations. They are trained to preserve and collect evidence. The acknowledgement and concession, this was really the first time he had handled this type of crime scene, is problematic. You know, I like the analogy to barbecues. When I see solo cups, I think of beer pong. I guess he was being innovative, but why not wait? If the temperatures had not surpassed the freezing point, why not wait till the professionals are there? As far as the paper bag, I will tell you, paper bags is actually the common practice for securing blood evidence because it's permeable. I know the National Institute of Criminal Justice, most state police departments, after you secure blood in a container, it's preferable to put it in a paper bag. So I thought that was much ado about nothing. But again, I'm wondering why the Canton Police Department is the one taking charge of evidence collection. And this is 2022. I mean, conceitedly, they don't investigate a lot of murder cases, but they have accidents, they have assaults, they have cases where there's blood evidence. I cannot believe that they didn't have the appropriate containers and cone markers and things that every other modern day police department you would expect to have.
And Dr. Keith Taylor, that's the other big part of this, right, is who's doing the collecting of the evidence there. It's cold. Like, this stuff is not going anywhere, so what's the rush to collect it in a solo cup versus bringing state police in or the sheriff or someone who's got what I guess you would normally collect this type of evidence in?
And so the lieutenant stated that nothing was usual about this case, and it certainly would be very helpful to understand the thinking behind the necessity to use these non-traditional ways of collecting evidence for that purpose. Why couldn't they wait to get the appropriate containers that are admissible in court and have some sort of effectiveness and is accepted by the appropriate evidentiary standards. So I think we need to find out a little more about why they thought that this was an exigent circumstance that required that they collect this evidence right away using the most efficient way that they could, as opposed to the normal process where it'd be less likely to be rejected in court.
I want to take a listen now to more cross-examination, and this has to do with what else they're looking for or find at the scene and where they go to look for it.
At any point along that curb line, did you see a men's shoe?
Along the exposed curb line, no.
Did you see it anywhere else?
No.
And you didn't see a hat anywhere else?
No.
You didn't see any bright red taillight material anywhere else?
I did not.
You did not see any clear taillight material?
I did. I did not.
You did not see any black plastic material? No. You certainly didn't see 45 pieces of plastic material?
I did not.
If you had found a broken glass, if you find a broken glass on somebody's yard in a situation like this, did that seem out of place to you?
They were coming from a bar. It didn't seem totally out of place, no.
At the time that you found the broken glass, would you rationally think, well, maybe the rest of this glass is inside the residence?
No.
You did not think that?
No, there was reason that I didn't think that.
Did you think that, well, let me ask you this. Did you ever go inside the house to search for the other part of the glass?
Absolutely not.
Because you made up your mind initially where that glass came from.
Objection.
You can answer that, sir.
No.
Did you search the house for any other matching glasses?
No, no.
All right, Dr. Debbie Goodman, your thoughts here now. We've got a missing shoe because the victim has just one shoe on. He's referencing 45 pieces of plastic that are found afterwards by the state police when they come in. And then you've got the cocktail glass, and you're not matching it, or there's no attempt to match it either in the house or I guess at one of the bars that they went to. What are your thoughts about how you should handle all of those issues?
Right, and certainly there's this lack of either professionalism or just knowledge and training, unfortunately, in which this investigator is operating. Again, some of the earlier commentary about all of the resources and all of the mechanisms in place that would have absolutely heightened so many levels and layers to this, because you want to connect the dots. The evidence is designed for that very purpose, but it almost feels like it was done in this haphazard type of manner. So I think what's really being questioned now would be two things: the level of training and education and experience of the individual doing the gathering, collecting, preserving, and then the process here that maybe just simply was not aligned with process, procedure, protocol, and policy, which has to happen in every case. So it's there's a lot of doubt.
All right, folks, we're out of time for tonight, but we will speak again about this case for sure. Thank you all. Joseph Krowski Jr., Dr. Keith Taylor, Dr. Debbie Goodman. When we come back, we're going to talk about someone else who was at the house that night, really seemingly important figure in all this, Brian Higgins. Who is he?
Now, Sergeant Good, who is Brian Higgins?
He is a ATF agent that has a satellite office out of the Canton Police Department.
Do you know of any ATF agents that have offices at the Canton Police Department?
Not that I know of, no.
You're aware that Brian Higgins is a close friend of the former Canton Police Chief, Kenneth Berkowitz?
Sure.
You know that Chief Berkowitz was the reason that he was allowed to maintain an office at the Canton Police Department?
I didn't know that.
Okay, so Brian Higgins. This is a name you're going to hear throughout this trial, and the defense is going to make a big deal about Brian Higgins. He was inside the home that night at the after party. If you take a look at people inside the Albert home on that night, Brian Higgins, one of them. Also, for background, friendly with John O'Keefe, but also probably a little more friendly with Karen Reed, allegedly. I don't know, but that's going to come up throughout this case as well. I want you to take a listen to Sergeant Sean Good here again, talking about that night, right? It's the night. It's the night of the party into the following morning where John O'Keefe is found. Take a listen.
You would agree with me that 1:30 in the morning was hours before John O'Keefe was found unresponsive on Brian Albert's front lawn, correct?
Yes.
You had no information at 1:30 in the morning that John O'Keefe was out on Brian Albert's front lawn at that time, correct?
Correct.
And when Brian Higgins entered the department, that was the first time you had seen him on either the 28th or the 29th, correct?
Correct.
And this is again at 1:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
you have to say yes or no.
Yes.
Thank you. You didn't know where he was coming from?
No.
You didn't know what he had done that night?
Absolutely not.
You didn't know who he had been with that night?
No.
This was a Friday night into early Saturday morning with a major blizzard forecast.
Correct.
It had already started snowing.
Yes.
It was supposed to get worse.
Yes.
Was it unusual to see Brian Higgins come into the station at 1:30 a.m. on a weekend?
No.
At any point, did he tell you why he was there?
No.
Let's skip ahead a few hours later. You're still working dispatch when a call came in that a man was found unresponsive on Brian Albert's front lawn, correct?
Yes.
This is just after 6 a.m.?
Yes.
You would agree with me that ultimately when the location was entered into your system, the location was entered as 32 Fairview, correct?
No, it was 34. At least we put it out as 34.
34 was the actual address, but 32 is what made it into the police report, sir, did it not?
No, my police report says 34 Fairview.
What is the location listed in your very police report?
On the face sheet, it says 32, but in my narrative is 34.
All right, let's bring in our guest back with us, Karen Reed supporter and expert, Nick Rocco, and joining us, the YouTube creator behind Yellow Cottage Tales, Kevin Lenahan. Great to have you both there. All right, Kevin, I'll start with you. Why is Brian Higgins back at the police station, at his office in the police station at 1:30 after being at the Alberts home for the party?
Well, we don't know, but Officer Good testified that it wasn't unusual. So, I mean, it's just how he operated for whatever reason.
Nick, your thoughts about Brian Higgins being there at 1:30?
I think it's pretty unusual for an ATF agent who was with Brian Albert all day down in New York at a funeral, came back home, drinking all day, and to clock in at 1:30 in the morning, drunk, drinking all day. What police officer or federal FTA agent is able to clock into work at 1:30 in the morning after drinking all night? That is absurd.
Kevin, any concern there from your perspective? And when, you know, because I think he's got to testify, right? Brian Higgins?
Yeah.
And will likely have some sort of an explanation for being there, because it's kind of unusual. There's a snowstorm coming up, we all know. Your thoughts?
Well, there's some concern for him professionally, you know, about his conduct, about whether, you know, some of his practices and style of doing things. But the jury's not going to hear this, but the feds dug hard into this, and they have told Brian Higgins' attorney that he is not a target. And I can tell you from excellent sources that Brian Higgins is still working to this day for the ATF, and he still has his office in Canton. So he's not a suspect yet.
Let's take a listen now to part of the defense opening, again referencing Brian Higgins.
After people left the after-hours party at Brian Albert's house on January 29, Brian Albert claimed that he had no contact with anyone but his wife until he was woken up in the morning. But you will learn that he was ultimately confronted by the fact that his phone records revealed that he had actually placed a phone call to ATF agent Brian Higgins, his friend, the same friend who had been at his house earlier that night. And that was at 2:22 in the morning. You'll learn that Brian Higgins called him back 17 seconds later, and they connected for 22 seconds on their cell phones.
All right, Kevin, your thoughts about now you've got Brian Albert at the home, apparently calling. I don't know if they're going to say it's a double butt dial, but calling at 2:22 in the morning after Brian Higgins has gone back to his office at the Canton police station.
Guys that are out drinking do things sometimes that they don't want to be known to the public. They have things on their phones that they don't want to be known to the public. And so there may be some fudging about exactly what went on, but it was only a 22-second call. So I hardly think this was the stuff of a grand conspiracy.
Nick, your thoughts about these calls, 2:22, is that time significant?
Of course it's significant. I mean, first they're saying that they had no contact with anybody. Now when they get exposed for lying, then it turns into a butt dial. And at 2:22, guess what happened right after that? Jennifer McCabe Google searches Hosslong to die in cold. That's not a coincidence. The plan was in place, and you know the butt dials didn't happen. It's going to come out. They were not butt dials. They had communications. They know what they were talking about, and it will come out soon.
I want to take a look at side-by-side images right now of the back of Karen Reed's car, because there's some images. On the left, this is from the Sally port. On the right is what they saw at the jury view. I know at the jury view, the back tail light was completely removed. Any significance or anything that either one of you took from those images today, the video and the images from Karen Reed's car being seized and brought into the Sally port? I'll start with you, Kevin.
I think it's hard to take anything today. I did note that last Friday Lally asked the jury to pay special note to the center console. And doing a little bit of research, I found out that the center console on this vehicle has an advanced safety system that automatically brakes. And on the left of the center console is an override. So will there be any data in the electronic record as to whether she used that?
Is that for backing up also? Is that?
Yes.
So her
Yes.
vehicle has backup safety as well, where it'll brake if there's someone there unless you override it?
Yeah, that's my understanding. And I took an effort last night. I just on a hunch looked at the video of her backing up into the drive lane. And you do see her reach over, but you don't know if is she pushing the override or is she grabbing the shift. It's really hard to tell. But she does clearly reach over right at that time when you would need to hit the override. So maybe suggesting she might have intentionally backed into John's Traverse.
All right, Nick, anything you took away from the video from inside the Sally Port and either comparing it to the what they saw at the jury view or from anything else in the case?
Well, I think the jury view most likely went well for Karen Reed. These jurors are smart. They most likely sized themselves up to this vehicle. They're looking at the damage of the car. There's really no damage other than a missing taillight. And when these jury members are looking at this vehicle, it's in pristine condition, other than the fact that they ripped out the center console and the whole taillight housing is gone. But when those jurors were looking at that taillight and measuring their body up to it, I'm most likely they came to the conclusion that a body did not hit this vehicle at all. But this Sally Port video, it's interesting that they have this one, but they don't have the 42 minutes missing when they brought the vehicle there in the morning, or I should say at night, actually, when they first brought the vehicle to the garage. Missing, gone, 42 minutes.
Nick Rocco, Kevin Lenahan, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.